in design for about 25 years now, and I work for a company called ProductOps, and we're in Santa Cruz, California. We're a small boutique firm, as we like to say. We're about 50 people, and we do strategy, design. The interesting thing is we also do development. We do a lot of platform architecture. We like to focus on data and IoT in those spaces. And my actual title is head of design, but I get into business development and a lot of other things because, again, we're a small firm and we're very hands-on, relationship driven. So I think the best way I can get into that is to say, most people when they think of design, I think look at the user experience from what they see on a screen, for example, on a mobile device or a desktop computer, and they think of the visual design first. So for us, we kind of span the gamut of software development from start to finish, and to build that user experience and that visual design, what goes behind that are a number of layers, and this doesn't actually occur linearly in time, but what happens is these layers kind of look like the user sitting in front of a screen. They see their visual design, the branding, the color, the fonts. Behind that is information hierarchy and interaction design, how the workflows guide them through the software to get them to the goals that they want to reach. Behind that are APIs that connect to a platform, and that platform needs to be architected. Those APIs need to be built to deliver information to the screen and to the user and back and forth. And then prior to that, there's some amount of product or service design that happens. And then prior to that is a discovery process where a company like ProductOps, for example, would come in and get to know the organization, the people in the organization, how they view their customers, their end users, what their goals are, who all the stakeholders are, the politics of the organization, just about everything that you could think of about the organization and where they want to go with their product or their service. And you scrunch all that together and you end up with that end user experience. And that's kind of how we view design. So the research actually continues pretty much throughout the project because we're talking to end users at different stages. What I prefer is really, I love to interview users. I love doing interviews and just talking to people about what they do, what they want to do. So that's number one. Number two is I love to observe behavior kind of in the wild, as they say, and really observe users and collect data that way. We do ethnographic studies and a whole bunch of different things depending on what's appropriate for the client and the project that's at hand. And then we do a lot of prototyping with user feedback. We still at times do paper prototyping. We use a lot of prototyping tools. We build physical prototypes and we take those out in the field, and we observe users using the thing that we're trying to build, and then we iterate over and over again. Well, it depends on what the project is. It may bring no value whatsoever, but if it's used appropriately, it can bring value, and it can be very quick and dirty, and it can happen in a meeting in front of a user where you're trying to explain something to them and say, look, this is what we think we want to do. Does this make sense to you? Imagine if you wanted to build a UI or some interaction or some workflow that did not exist. And so imagine if you were in front of a user, you were interviewing them, and you wanted to explain some workflow to them that you were thinking about implementing, and you wanted to get feedback on it, and you needed to tell the story of how this workflow was going to be. You may draw it on a whiteboard. You may actually draw it on a piece of paper and say, if you tap here, flip this piece of paper over, this is what happens. We don't do that too much anymore. We have digital tools that we can interact with end users over the internet. Envision is one of them. So it can mean a number of things, but if you were thinking about interaction design in the sense of a software UI, you would look at a signifier, a button or something on the screen that signified to the user that they could do something, and then that button would offer affordances. What happens when I tap it with my finger or I click it with the mouse button? Another way I like to think about interaction design that's not related to software is if you're designing a service for, we're designing a service for a client. If we're designing a service for a client, this is another way to look at interaction design. If you've ever had to call a cable company, for example, or somebody, and you have to go through the menus, well, you're interacting with that company, right? There's a user interaction there. So interaction design doesn't just mean software user interfaces. And when we're building a service or product for a client, we really have to take all of that at every touch point that an end user may have to interact with that product or service. We need to think about what that interaction looks like, and how we want that user to behave, and how we want them to be reaching their end goals efficiently and have a pleasurable experience. Probably voice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest with you.
Okay. So like voice is the next big thing.
Yeah, when design means a lot of things, and when we're designing something for someone, there's in the IoT space, there's kind of an art form. Data management is really a big thing, because you have sensors collecting data constantly, and you can store that data sometimes on the sensors, sometimes on the edge device, sometimes you upload it to the platform and then you store it. For example, if you never are going to use data, you store it later and it's not really retrievable. There are all kinds of things that you can do, and there's a lot of design thinking methodology, kind of a mindset that has to go into designing an IoT system, from data collection to insights. And so I think really the magic is in that data transfer from the sensors to the platform. Yeah, absolutely. I think UX, as the term is kind of used now for design everywhere, I think there's a lot of overlap, and architecture is one place that I see it, at least in my experience. We'll architect a platform for someone where we have data storage, a data lake, data is collected where there's an ETL component to it. And there are all these pieces to the data platform to manage this data, and a lot of times that's to technical-minded people. It's easy to grok what all that stuff is and how it works and how it interacts, but to a lot of people that are on the business side that aren't so technical, they need to understand that story. Okay, we're gonna drop a whole lot of money on this new platform and this new system to build this product or service. I need to understand where the money's going and what we're doing and what the goals are that we're trying to accomplish. They don't care so much about the components of the data platform or how the data flows through, but they do need to know that, and they need to know where all the players in the organization, the end users, all fit into the platform and how it all interacts. We build these landscape diagrams as a design team, and what it's really for is so that people can come in that don't have that in-depth technical knowledge of how data is handled, how the engineering side of it, what data scientists do, and they can look at this document that we produce, this artifact, and they can understand what the company is investing in and what's going to happen and how it's going to be built, why it takes as long as it does. And we help a lot of CTOs, CIOs, people that are very technically minded, all the kind of fancy pants developer types, really talk to the business people who are really focused on other things, be able to tell that story to them, and then they can turn around and tell it to whoever they need to tell it to, end users, customers, investors, board of directors, whatever it might be. And that's where the designers come in. They facilitate the telling of that story of the data platform and the architecture of that data platform. An example is if you sales and order management system. Finance touches it, developers touch it, there's data stored, customer data, institution data. So all the departments in the company would touch this in some way. They would have different types of data collected from different places and useful to different people. It gets very complicated. And everybody that's involved kind of needs to understand where they fit in and what their role is in this and how it's going to benefit them and how ultimately it's going to benefit the company and the customers. So a good design team will help tell that story. The trend is right now really good designers, really good UX people are very, very hard to find. They're in high demand, which is great if you're in the design business. I can tell you how we hire and how most of the people that I know that are heading up design teams in various different companies of different sizes do it. And right now there are so many skilled people out there. Most of them are working. They're expensive. That the first thing that you tend to look for is cultural fit, personality, and look for those soft skills that either really can't be trained, you can't train someone up on, or they just take experience developed. Some people inherently know and do those things, and that's great. As far as being able to wireframe, use all of the tools, speak the language, those are the types of things that I think we and most other companies are willing to invest in for the right people. So again, we're looking kind of for those soft skills, and that cultural fit is the first thing that we look for. So I think right now a lot of people in Northern California specifically, it's a little bigger than Silicon Valley, are really hiring for that designer mindset. The great questioner. Are you a great questioner? Can you tell a great story? Are you a great listener? Those skills are critical to being a great designer.